You know, when you think about the things we value most in art or really in any kind of craftsmanship, we naturally associate a massive amount of that value with the sheer effort it took to create it.
Oh, absolutely. The struggle is part of the appeal.
Right. Think about building one of those incredibly intricate ships in a bottle. If you've ever watched someone do this, it is like meticulous.
And endlessly frustrating, I'd imagine.
Exactly. It requires a steady hand, these specialized tiny tweezers, and an immense, almost unreasonable amount of patience. We look at the finished product and we respect it because it's an elite skill, right? It
Oh.
requires overcoming massive friction.
Yeah, the friction is the filter.
But now imagine if someone handed you a cardboard box and all you had to do was toss in a handful of wood chips, some loose string, a bit of glue, and an empty glass bottle. And close the box, give it a little 3-second shake, and poof.
Yeah.
Out pops a perfectly constructed museum-quality galleon inside the glass.
Every single time.
Every time.
It completely shatters our understanding of how things are supposed to be made, you know?
Yeah.
The friction of creation is just, it's entirely removed.
Mm.
And historically, across almost every medium, we've relied heavily on that friction to act as a quality filter.
Right, because if anyone can just shake the box and get the galleon, then the galleon itself fundamentally changes in value.
Completely.
And that removal of friction, that total elimination of the effort required to make something polished and complex is exactly what we are unpacking today. So welcome to the deep dive. For those of you joining us, you want to stay ahead of the curve without, drowning in the information overload. And today, our entire focus is on a single, highly provocative piece of writing that argues this exact friction is about to vanish from one of our most dominant mediums.
Video.
Exactly, video.
And I think it's important to state right up front that the argument isn't just that video editing will get a little faster or, have better templates or whatever.
No, not at all.
The piece makes the case for the absolute end of video editing as a chore. Entirely.
It's a massive claim. So the source material we're digging into today is a blog post dated March 26, 2026. It is titled Netizen, Video as It Was Always Meant to Be, and it's written by a futurist named Paramendra Kumar Pagat.
Yeah, Pagat is an interesting guy.
He really is. Now, just to establish why we're looking at this specific author, Pagat is not some random guy posting hot takes on the internet.
Right, he's got serious reach.
Over 7.3 million page views on his site alone, and he writes exhaustively about these macro-level societal shifts. But I have to admit, as I was reading his bio and looking at the sidebar of his site, I was frankly getting a little lost in the jargon.
It can be dense, yeah.
Very dense. He's written books with titles like The Convergence Age, Agentic AI, Set to Explode in 2026, and Liquid Computing, The Future of Human-Tech Symbiosis.
That sounds like sci-fi.
It does. So before we even get to the video stuff, what are we actually talking about here? What is liquid computing or agentic AI?
Well, it's really important context, actually, because it shows how he views the timeline of technology. When he talks about liquid computing, he's describing an impending era where computing power isn't tied to a specific physical device.
Like not tied to your laptop or your phone?
Exactly. It's the idea that computing becomes a seamless, invisible resource, kind of like water or electricity, that flows effortlessly across whatever interface you're using. And eventually, that even includes direct human-tech interfaces.
Wow. Okay. And what about agentic AI? Because he emphasizes that for his 2026 timeline.
Right. So agentic AI is a massive leap beyond the standard generative AI we got used to in the early 2020s.
Meaning it's not just a chatbot where I ask for a pancake recipe and it spits out a block of text.
Yeah, exactly. Generative AI is fundamentally a call and response tool. You prompt it, it generates an output, and it stops. It just waits for you.
It's passive.
Highly passive. But agentic AI or AI agents possess agency. You don't give them a simple prompt, you give them a complex, multi-layered goal. So if you say, research the real estate market in Chicago, find 3 undervalued properties, draft emails to the listing agents, and schedule viewings on my calendar for next Tuesday.
That's a lot of steps.
Right, and the agentic AI breaks that massive goal down into dozens of micro steps. It executes them sequentially, it adjusts if it hits a roadblock, like if an agent's email bounces, and it completes the entire workflow autonomously.
Okay, that makes total sense. And I see he also writes heavily about global scale infrastructure. Like, there are embedded videos on his site about ending poverty through biometric economic systems, massive ocean cleanup initiatives, and something called PropTech.
Yeah, property technology.
Yeah.
Specifically, using AI to completely reorganize global real estate, urban planning, and housing distribution to essentially solve the housing crisis.
Right. So this is exactly what caught my attention. When a mind that is clearly obsessed with macro-level, civilization-altering problems, curing poverty, fixing global housing, liquid computing, when a guy like that suddenly turns his intense focus to something as seemingly mundane as consumer video editing.
You really have to ask why.
Yes, we have to ask why. He clearly doesn't see this as just a cool new app filter for social media. He views this as a foundational shift. He argues we are about to unlock a new ocean of content, and that YouTube, the undisputed king of video for 2 decades, is about to look like a quaint little puddle.
Yeah, he views AI video editing as a killer app within this much larger technological convergence. And to understand how big he thinks this is, you really just have to look at his opening sentence.
Yes, the opening line is incredibly bold. He doesn't start by talking about gigabytes or render times or social media algorithms.
Not at all.
He writes, and I'm quoting here, "The impending age of abundance was prophesied in the scriptures thousands of years ago."
It's a deeply techno-optimist stance, framing technological advancement almost as a spiritual or evolutionary milestone.
It's a huge claim for a blog post about video editing.
It is. But if you look at his broader bibliography, he actually has a book called Calciism, the economic and spiritual blueprint for an age of abundance. He's arguing that humanity is transitioning out of an era defined entirely by scarcity.
Scarcity of what, exactly?
Well, scarcity of energy, scarcity of labor, and, in the case of video, a scarcity of creative and technical skill. He fundamentally believes artificial intelligence is the mechanism that finally eradicates these scarcities.
Okay, I have to stop you there and push back on this grand utopian framing.
Sure.
An age of abundance sounds beautiful on paper, but for you, me, and everyone listening who actually spends time on the internet, are we really entering an age of abundance? Or are we just rushing headlong into an age of infinite noise?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right. I mean, it feels like we're standing in front of a library that holds infinite books, which sounds like a miracle until you walk inside and realize millions of those books are just gibberish or, minor variations of the exact same story. You're looking around wondering if this is actually a library or just a massive landfill of paper. If everyone can create highly polished video effortlessly, doesn't the sheer volume just drown out anything of actual value? How do we separate abundance from clutter?
That is the quintessential fear of the information age, and it's a very valid one.
Yeah.
But if we look at the historical mechanisms of media, every major leap in communication technology was met with that exact same fear.
Really? Like what?
Well, when the printing press was invented, there was absolute panic among the intellectual elite that society would be drowned in a flood of unvetted, low-quality pamphlets and heretical texts.
Basically the 15th century version of infinite noise.
Exactly. The fear was that the signal would be entirely lost in the noise. But what happens historically isn't that society collapses under the weight of the noise. What happens is that we invent new, highly sophisticated mechanisms for curation and discovery.
Oh, I see. We didn't burn the books. We invented the Dewey Decimal System. We built better card catalogs.
Precisely. The abundance of the printing press necessitated the creation of the editor, the publishing house, the critic, the library system, and the bestseller list.
So the curation evolves to meet the abundance.
Right. And Fagad's argument inherently relies on the idea that in an age of abundance, the AI won't just be the infinite creator of content, it will also be the ultimate hyper-personalized curator.
Like a bespoke filter.
Yes. Sifting through the noise to find the exact signal you actually care about. But to truly grasp how this abundance won't destroy the current landscape, but rather kind of swallow it whole, we need to look at how Fagat frames the concept of disruption. And he uses this fantastic ancient parable to do it.
I love this part of the piece. So, to explain what is about to happen to YouTube and the current media landscape, Fagat tells the story of Emperor Akbar the Great and his profoundly wise minister, Birbal.
It's a classic tale.
Yeah, so the story goes like this. They're holding court, and Emperor Akbar wants to test Birbal. He hands Birbal a simple wooden stick. The emperor points at it and issues a challenge. Make it shorter, but you cannot touch it.
And because it's an ancient parable, the penalty for failing this seemingly impossible riddle is death.
Of course it is. It's the ultimate high-stakes creative constraint. You can't snap it, you can't whittle it down with a knife, you can't touch it in any way.
Right.
But Burble, being the genius he is, doesn't panic. He simply walks away, finds a much, much longer piece of wood, walks back, and lays it down right next to the Emperor's stick. He points to the Emperor's stick and declares, "Behold, it is shorter now."
It is an incredibly elegant solution. And when you apply that logic to modern technological disruption, it completely upends how we usually think about market competition.
How so?
Well, we are so conditioned by the tech press to think of disruption as a zero-sum war, a battle of destruction. We constantly look for the Uber killer or the Google killer or the Netflix killer.
We want to see the old stick get snapped in half.
Exactly. We imagine these corporate showdowns where a new startup launches a better product, steals all the users, and the incumbent goes bankrupt, closes its doors, and vanishes.
Like what happened with Blockbuster. Netflix mailed DVDs, then started streaming, and Blockbuster physically ceased to exist. They were destroyed.
Right, we expect the old stick to be broken. But Forgot is arguing that the YouTube killer won't actually kill YouTube at all.
Really?
There won't be massive lawsuits or a dramatic collapse of Google's server farms. YouTube.com will still be there tomorrow, operating exactly as it does today with its billions of users. But just like Akbar's stick, it will suddenly, seemingly overnight, become the smaller stick.
Because the total volume of video being created in the world is about to explode so massively that YouTube's current monopoly will mathematically just become a tiny fraction of the whole.
Yes, and Forgot uses a geographical analogy to drive this home. He says, right now, YouTube looks like an ocean to us. It looks like Lake Michigan, and if you're standing on the shore of Lake Michigan, you can't see the other side. It feels boundless. It has its own weather systems.
Yeah.
But if you compare Lake Michigan to the Pacific Ocean, if you compare it to an ocean so unbelievably vast that oceanographers would call it the Mariana Trench of cat videos,
Then Lake Michigan is just a puddle.
it's just a puddle.
I see. So you don't actually have to defeat the incumbent company if you can exponentially expand the boundaries of the market itself.
That's the exact mechanism. This is market expansion, not market replacement.
That reframes so much of tech history for me, actually. Think about the wristwatch. When the smartphone was introduced, it didn't kill the wristwatch by breaking it. Wristwatches still exist.
Oh yeah, people still buy them.
Some are incredibly luxurious and expensive, but the smartphone fundamentally expanded the market of things we use to manage our day and tell time into a sprawling digital universe. It just made the wristwatch a much, much smaller part of your overall life. The smartphone was the longer stick.
That is a perfect parallel. If a company in 2026 tries to build a platform that just does what YouTube does, but slightly faster, they will fail.
Because YouTube has too much gravity.
Way too much. It has the creators, the audience, the ad revenue. You cannot beat them at their own game. But if you fundamentally change how video is generated, if you lower the barrier to entry to absolute zero, you unlock a universe of raw content that YouTube's current infrastructure, which relies on humans manually editing videos, simply cannot match in sheer volume.
But I'm trying to wrap my head around a shift of that magnitude. Has anything like this ever actually happened before? I mean, have we ever seen a medium go from a highly controlled, high-friction environment to an absolute free-for-all explosion of volume just by changing the underlying technology?
We have. And Pagat specifically points to a medium that underwent this exact same metamorphosis step by step about 2 decades ago.
Which is?
Photography.
Okay, yes. He takes us on a trip back to what he hilariously calls the dark ages of 2004. And reading this, I felt a deep wave of nostalgia because he perfectly captures the friction of that era.
It really was a different world.
He points out that back then, if you wanted your photo taken, it was an event. It was a logistical undertaking. You dressed up in your absolute best clothes. You drove across town to a physical photography studio.
Yep. The Sears Portrait Studio.
Exactly. You stood under hot lights, and you paid, as he puts it, a man with a mustache the price of a small goat for just 3 physical prints and a complimentary comb-over.
It sounds absurd now, but it's historically accurate. We treated photography as a scarce elite resource because the physical reality of the medium demanded it.
The friction was baked into the physics.
Precisely. If we look at the mechanics of film photography, every single time you press the shutter, it cost you actual money. You had a roll of film with maybe 24 or 36 exposures. You had to carefully ration them.
You couldn't just take 20 shots of the same pose to get the right angle.
No, not at all. Then came the friction of processing.
Hmm.
You had to physically transport that delicate film to a pharmacy or a developer, drop it off, wait 3 to 5 days, and pay for the development before you even knew if the photos were any good.
Oh man, the anxiety of getting that paper envelope back from the developer, you'd rip it open in your car in the parking lot, flip through them, and realize half of them were terribly blurry.
We're overexposed.
Yeah, your thumb was covering the lens on 5 of them, and someone was blinking in the only good group shot. It was a high-risk endeavor. And because the friction and the cost were so high, the photos we did choose to take were formal. They were planned milestones, birthdays, weddings, graduations. You didn't waste a frame on a random Tuesday.
Which is why Vigat's contrast with the Steve Jobs era is the linchpin of his argument. He notes that Steve Jobs, by successfully stuffing a high-quality digital camera into every pocket, didn't just iterate on the camera, he shattered the paradigm.
The stick got way longer.
Exactly. We went from photography as a planned, high-stakes ritual to photography as an unconscious, zero-cost reflex.
A reflex that resulted in an absolute deluge of pixels. Vigat mentions the explosion of duckface selfies, and how suddenly, practically overnight, your cousin's mundane lunch became content.
And we really need to pause on why that happened, because it answers your earlier question about infinite noise. Lowering the barrier to entry didn't just mean we took more formal, studio-style portraits.
Right, it wasn't just millions of Sears portraits?
No, it didn't mean everyone suddenly had 5,000 perfectly lit professional headshots sitting on their iPhones. What happened was that we invented entirely new genres of photography that quite literally did not exist before because they were never economically viable under the old system.
I see what you mean. You would never, ever pay the man with the mustache a small goat and wait 3 days to take a picture of your avocado toast.
Exactly.
The effort-to-reward ratio is totally broken there.
The elimination of friction, both the selfie, the food photo, the mirror pic, the quick snap of a weird street sign to text to a friend. The entire medium fundamentally mutated because the cost of creation dropped to zero.
It democratized it.
It democratized the capturing of the image, yes. But more importantly, it democratized the definition of what was worthy of being captured in the first place. The mundane became valid.
Okay, this brings up a massive question for me, and for anyone listening, think about this. If photography made this monumental, society-shifting leap 2 decades ago, if we already learned this lesson, why is video still stuck in the dark ages? We all have 4K video cameras in our pockets right now. Capturing the video is just as easy as taking the photo.
Right.
I can film my lunch just as easily as I can photograph it. So why hasn't video had its massive avocado toast explosion yet?
Because capturing the video is only half the battle. With a photo, capture is the final step. You point, you click, you look at the screen, and you're done. You can upload it instantly.
Poof, done.
Right. But with video, capturing is just gathering the raw materials. The real problem, the monumental friction that prevents normal people from sharing their lives in video format, lies in what happens next, the post-production.
The edit.
The edit. And this perfectly tees up Vigat's analysis of the agonizing state of modern video creation.
He calls modern video the snobby aristocrat of the media world, which is just so perfectly said. And he lays out these incredible pain points that anyone who has ever tried to make a YouTube video will instantly recognize.
Oh, they hit very close to home.
He says that if you want to make a polished, cohesive 10-minute clip right now, you can't just snap it and post it. You have to completely clear your weekend calendar. You have to, as he puts it, sell a kidney and sacrifice a goat to the editing gods.
The visual of sacrificing a goat to the editing gods is a brilliant metaphor. It highlights just how arcane, punishing, and almost superstitious the manual editing process feels to an outsider.
You feel like you're performing a dark ritual just to get the audio to sync up.
Yes. He compares manual video editing to an ancient art form, but one that is simultaneously a brutal, soul-crushing chore. He jokes that the patience required makes medieval monks look like ADHD influencers.
It is the ultimate test of patience. He talks about the reality of spending 5 grueling hours staring at a screen, color correcting, cutting out dead air, trying to make the audio match the video, cursing at your software when it crashes.
And it always crashes.
It always crashes, only to finally hit render, wait another hour, and realize the final video is somehow upside down and features your cat aggressively photobombing the background in stunning 4K glory. It's emotionally devastating.
Let's dig into the psychology of that friction, though. Video editing is perhaps the highest friction creative activity that an everyday person might casually attempt. It's not just the sheer hours it consumes, it is the immense, overwhelming cognitive load required to do it well.
The cognitive load. Explain what you mean by that in this
Well,
context.
when you take a photo, you are operating in a purely visual, intuitive space. It's composition and light. But when you edit video manually, you are forced to learn an entirely new, highly technical language.
Sure.
Baguette mentions the frustration of learning 47 keyboard shortcuts that only exist to make you feel stupid. To edit a video, you have to suddenly understand nonlinear timelines, aspect ratios, frame rates, audio ducking, color grading, J-cuts, L-cuts, keyframes.
Just hearing that list makes me stressed out.
Exactly. Your brain has to constantly switch between the creative right brain task of, is this story engaging, and the deeply technical left brain task of, why is the audio waveform out of sync by 3 frames? Every single one of these technical requirements acts as a massive gatekeeper. It actively prevents normal people who have genuinely great stories from sharing those stories in a polished format.
It's imagine if everyone in the world was suddenly given a top-tier professional kitchen. You have a massive fridge full of the best ingredients. You have the sharpest Damascus steel knives.
Okay, I like where this goes.
But to actually cook a meal, you first have to build the stove from scratch out of raw metal and copper wire every single time you want to make dinner. Who would bother? You'd just order takeout. You'd never cook. And right now, most people just let their raw footage sit rotting on their phones because building the video editing stove is just too hard.
That is a phenomenal analogy. The barrier isn't gathering the ingredients we're filming our lives constantly.
Yeah.
The barrier is the tedious, highly technical chore of processing those ingredients into a consumable meal.
Yes.
And because building that stove is so exhausting, you only do it for Thanksgiving. You only edit the wedding video or the major 2-week European vacation. You would never go through the agony of building the stove just to edit a funny 2-minute video of your dog on a random Tuesday. The return on investment for your time simply isn't there. So the Tuesday video just sits on your hard drive forever.
But what happens when that homemade, complicated stove suddenly becomes a hyper-advanced microwave that can perfectly cook a gourmet Michelin star meal in 3 seconds?
That is the threshold we are crossing. Enter what Baguette calls the lazy genius we never knew we needed, agentic AI video editing.
This is where the paradigm shift actually clicks into place. Baguette gives a highly specific, incredibly relatable example of what an AI prompt will look like in this new era. Imagine just speaking this into your phone. Turn this 45-minute raw, rambling rant about my neighbor's lawn into a snappy, fast-paced trailer with dramatic music and exploding emojis.
And the result? Poof. Done. That's his exact phrasing. Poof. Done.
No timelines, no keyboard shortcuts, no spending an hour trying to figure out how to fade the audio out smoothly.
None of it. The AI agent ingests the 45 minutes of video. It listens to the audio, understands the context of the rant, identifies the funniest or most dramatic moments, cuts out the ums and the dead air, selects a royalty-free track that matches the emotional tone.
Syncs the cuts to the beat of the music.
Yes. It color grades the footage, adds the exploding emojis exactly where the punchlines land, and renders labor to prompt-based generation are profound.
It's a total flip.
We are shifting from editing as a mechanical, highly trained skill to editing as a purely directional intent. You're no longer the laborer sweating in the sun moving the bricks. You are the architect simply standing back and pointing to where the building should go. As Baguette says, video production becomes as effortless as taking a selfie while pretending you're not taking a selfie.
It's an incredibly vivid and funny visual, but I really want to push back on this because this touches a nerve for anyone who loves film or respects craftsmanship.
Naturally.
If the AI agent is doing absolutely all the heavy lifting, pacing, cutting, scoring, do we lose the actual art of the edit? So much of filmmaking, so much of the raw emotion of a great video comes from a human editor deciding exactly which frame to cut on, deciding how to let a quiet moment breathe to build tension, or how to abruptly cut to get a laugh. Is that struggle, that human touch, actually what makes a piece of art valuable? Or is that argument just gatekeeping from people who spent 10 years and thousands of dollars learning how to use Adobe Premiere?
That is the central philosophical debate of the AI era. Are we democratizing art, or are we actively cheapening it? What's fascinating about Baguette's perspective is that he implicitly argues we are democratizing the polish of media, not necessarily replacing the human soul of it.
Explain that distinction.
Think about it this way. When high-end cinematic editing requires absolutely zero technical skill, the value of a video shifts entirely away from the craft of assembly. The value moves entirely to the raw material being captured and the imagination of the person writing the prompt.
Ah, I see. So it becomes much less about your technical ability to navigate complex software and much more about your ability to have an interesting life or a unique thought or a funny perspective in the first place.
Precisely. If literally anyone can make a perfectly lit, perfectly paced, perfectly scored video, then a perfectly paced video is no longer special. It's the baseline.
It's the new zero.
Right. What becomes special, what stands out in the ocean, is the authenticity of the human moment captured, the inherent humor of the situation, the unique perspective of the creator. The AI isn't replacing the human emotion, it just acts as a universal translator, removing the massive friction barrier between your authentic moment and the audience's ability to watch it pleasantly.
Okay, if we accept that premise that editing now takes literally zero effort and just requires a prompt, it immediately unlocks a staggering, almost unimaginable backlog of footage. We're all walking around with these supercomputers in our pockets, and they are absolutely stuffed with unedited raw material.
This is exactly what Bhagat refers to as the untapped oceans of footage lying dormant beneath the calm surface of today's internet, the raw data of human existence.
The examples he gives to illustrate this are so spot on. He talks about the random 37-second clip sitting on your phone of your dad attempting to do the floss dance at a wedding.
We all have that clip.
We all have it. He talks about the grueling 12-minute saga of Aunt Linda trying to assemble IKEA furniture, which, with AI, you can now casually ask to be narrated in the dramatic, sweeping style of David Attenborough. Or the raw, unfiltered footage of every toddler on Earth discovering gravity for the 47th time by aggressively dropping a spoon off a high chair.
These aren't just isolated dead files anymore. In this new zero-friction paradigm, they are raw materials waiting to be assembled into compelling narratives. We are talking about the industrial-scale birthing of content.
Industrial scale. That phrase feels so cold and massive when applied to our intimate personal memories.
It sounds massive because the volume is massive. Right now, your phone's camera roll is essentially a digital graveyard.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a dark warehouse where memories go to sit in folders, maybe to be casually swiped through once a year when you're feeling nostalgic. But if you suddenly have access to an AI agent that deeply understands narrative pacing, comedic timing, and emotional arcs, those hard drives full of forgotten memories are resurrected. They become dynamic, highly produced entertainment.
I want to pause and talk directly to you, listening right now. I want you to literally think about your own phone. Think about your camera roll. How many gigabytes of unused, unedited footage do you have just waiting in the dark for a lazy genius to turn it into a masterpiece? You probably have thousands of videos, clips from family vacations, endless videos of your pet sleeping, random moments with friends that were hilarious for exactly 3 seconds, but are surrounded by 2 solid minutes of shaky, useless, poorly lit footage.
So much shaky footage.
Right now, because of the friction of the stove, you do nothing with them. They are dead weight. But tomorrow?
Tomorrow, you don't have to build the stove. You just tell the AI agent, take all the videos of my golden retriever from the last 3 years, scan them all, find the exact moments where he looks the most confused, cut out the rest, color correct it so it looks like summer, and edit it into a high-energy, fast-paced training montage set to 80s synth pop.
And it's just done.
10 seconds later, you have a flawless piece of entertainment.
The sheer volume of this new content is staggering to even conceptualize. If every single person on Earth with a smartphone is suddenly generating highly polished, incredibly engaging videos from their massive backlog of life, it is going to fundamentally change the actual types of stories we consume as a society.
It completely shifts us away from the centralized mass media model we've lived with for a century. Bhagat draws a sharp contrast between the old news paradigm and this new ocean. The old paradigm is the classic journalistic trope, man bites dog.
Right.
For a story to be told on video, it has to be highly unusual, highly anomalous, or involve celebrities. It has to be exceptional to warrant the massive financial expense and friction of video production, editing, and distribution.
Right. It has to be a blockbuster movie, a massive news event, or a highly produced Mr. Beast video to justify the cost.
But in this new ocean, where the cost drops to zero, the floodgates open for what Bhagat beautifully refers to as ordinary celebrations.
I love the examples he gives for this new genre of storytelling. He talks about Susan from 142 Oak Street celebrating her 50th birthday with a cake that looks suspiciously like her ex-husband.
It's such a specific, funny visual.
Under the old paradigm, no one outside of Susan's living room sees that. But because of AI editing, we get a full cinematic breakdown at 11. Or he mentions the grandma who drops a 90-minute epic documentary about her garden gnomes. An epic that is so perfectly edited by her AI that it somehow wins an Oscar in a brand new absurd category.
Oh.
Best Picture, that was filmed entirely in one take while yelling at the Wi-Fi.
It's humorous, yes, but the sociological and cultural impact he's dissecting here is profound. He writes, every language will have its own Hollywood. Every teenager with a smartphone will be the next Scorsese. This represents the ultimate decentralization of culture. We are moving from a world where a few dozen executives in Los Angeles or New York decide what stories are valid and get told, to a world where millions of microcultures, tight-knit communities, and hyperlocal neighborhoods generate their own blockbuster-quality entertainment.
It's video as it was meant to be, according to him. Raw, instant, and gloriously pointless, with absolutely zero gatekeepers telling you what is or isn't worth sharing.
Let's explore that specific phrase he uses. Pure, uncut humanity, edited by robots so we don't have to suffer the indignity of effort. What does it actually mean for human connection when our incredibly mundane, everyday lives are given the million-dollar blockbuster treatment?
It's like everyone suddenly gets to star in, direct, and score their own personal version of The Truman Show, but entirely on their own terms. We don't have to be celebrities to be the main characters of our own incredibly well-produced, emotionally resonant reality shows.
And this changes how we relate to our neighbors in our communities. If I can effortlessly watch a beautifully crafted, genuinely hilarious 5-minute documentary about my neighbor's epic struggles to keep his lawn green, it creates a new kind of social fabric. It's intimacy at scale, but is a very specific type of intimacy, one that is heavily mediated and polished by artificial intelligence. The AI agent acts as a cultural translator, turning the raw, messy data of our lives into compelling, structured human narratives that others actually want to watch.
But with all this new, hyper-personalized cinematic content flooding the world, this absolute Mariana Trench of Susan's birthday cakes and Grandma's garden gnomes, what actually happens to the old king of video?
Yeah.
We have to circle back to the Akbar and Birbal parable. What happens to the Lake Michigan of video? What happens to YouTube?
It survives. Bhagat calls it the survival of the quaint.
He says YouTube will still be there. It will still be collecting its ad revenue. It will still proudly display its carefully algorithm-curated, recommended rabbit holes of bizarre conspiracy theories and endless toy unboxing videos.
Classics.
Right, the classics. It will still recommend that one incredibly specific low-res video from 2012 about a raccoon stealing a bag of Doritos.
But next to the new, boundless ocean of frictionless, hyper-personalized content, YouTube will look adorably quaint. The synthesis of his entire argument is that the revolution won't be televised in the traditional broadcast sense. It will be, as he says, AI-edited, auto-captioned, and uploaded before you even finish your morning coffee.
It all ties back perfectly to that opening parable of the stick. Akbar sitting on his throne, looking at the two pieces of wood and nodding approvingly. "Birbal, you magnificent bastard, you've done it again."
That parable perfectly encapsulates the true nature of technological progress. True progress doesn't necessarily destroy the past in a fiery explosion. It simply outgrows it to an unimaginable scale. Just like the smartphone didn't destroy the wristwatch, this new AI video ocean won't destroy YouTube. It will just relegate it to being a specific, much smaller type of legacy experience.
But here's a thought that I can't shake. If the new ocean is completely full of AI-edited perfection, perfect pacing, perfect lighting adjustments, flawless audio ducking, perfectly timed dramatic music, will we actually start feeling intensely nostalgic for the clunky, badly lit, poorly edited YouTube videos of the past? Will human error, the awkward pause, the bad jump cut, the sound of the creator breathing heavily into the microphone, will that become a premium aesthetic?
Historically speaking, that is highly likely. We saw it with vinyl records returning with a vengeance in the age of pristine Spotify audio. We see it with Gen Z applying heavy film drain and light leak filters to their pristine, mathematically perfect digital iPhone photos. When perfection becomes completely effortless and ubiquitous, imperfection suddenly becomes a rare sign of authenticity.
The clunkiness becomes the point.
Right. The clunkiness of early YouTube, the very friction we are so eager to eliminate, might become a highly sought-after artisanal style.
The artisanal, handcrafted 2012 raccoon video aesthetic, I could see it now. People paying top dollar for an editor who explicitly promises not to use AI just so the video feels slightly off rhythm and authentic.
Exactly. It'll become a stylistic choice
rather
than a technical limitation. But regardless of the aesthetic shifts and the nostalgia, the fundamental underlying reality is that the dam is breaking. The friction of the editing timeline is gone forever.
Let's bring this all together. We started by looking at the immense pain, the massive cognitive load, and the deep frustration of a 5-hour manual video edit, the literal sacrifice to the editing gods. And we've journeyed through by God's vision of a near future, specifically marked for 2026, where that friction drops to absolute zero.
It's a profound shift.
A future that unleashes an ocean of hyper-local Hollywoods, birthed from agentic AI, turning the dormant digital graveyards of our camera rolls into cinematic masterpieces. The core takeaway here is that the unused footage sitting in your pocket right now is no longer dead data. It is unmined gold waiting for the impending AI revolution.
The tools are arriving, the AI agents are waking up, the old stick is about to be completely dwarfed.
But before we go, I want to leave you with a new, lingering question to mull over. Something that builds on everything Fagot laid out today, but takes it one step further into this age of abundance.
What's that?
If the barrier to creating a 90-minute cinematic masterpiece drops to absolute zero, and literally everyone on Earth is suddenly generating Oscar-worthy epics about their garden gnomes, their neighbor's lawns, or their cousin's lunch, who is actually left to be the audience?
Oh, wow.
Right. In this boundless new ocean where the speed of production outpaces human attention by 1,000,000,000 to 1, will we eventually need to build new AI agents just to watch and appreciate our videos for us?
A truly fascinating paradox to end on.
Think about that the next time you look at the thousands of unedited clips on your phone. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.